Okay, hello. Coming at you with a story time video today, actually switching it up a little bit from the everyday vlogs that I do, and I'm very excited to try something new out on this channel, and hopefully you enjoy it. This specific story time is going to be a personal story that is true to me in my life. I do want to preface this by saying I am not looking for any type of sympathy or for anyone to feel sorry for me. I really actually was thinking a lot about this recently and feel that I should make a video for any parents or other just people in general. You don't have to be a parent. This could be happening to you. But if you do have children, I wanted to make this video almost to kind of raise awareness that sometimes it is okay to get a second opinion. Sometimes it is okay to not believe or trust your doctor, or to have that doctor like not just fit with what you need. Just like you don't always get along with every type of person, a certain type of doctor that you have just might not fit what you are looking for, or you might not trust or be able to take seriously. And I just think that this needs to be shared because in my life, I know I'm the only person that I've ever met that or I've never met anyone else that has had anything like this happen to them. But for me personally, it could have affected my entire life or ended my life. So I want to talk about this. I want to bring awareness to it. And especially if someone else has gone through something similar to this, then you at least know you're not alone. But also for someone who might be wondering what's going on within their own child or within themselves, this might maybe help you. I'm not sure. I just think it's really important to talk about and share that doctors can make mistakes, and it can be obviously not a good thing at all. So like I said, I'm not doing this for the attention or the sympathy. I want to do this just in case anyone else has gone through something similar, is going through something similar, is wondering, should I say something, should I not? Definitely speak up if it comes to your health or someone you love's health. Speaking up is never a bad thing. And there's a way to do it nicely, but obviously it's important to say something because it could end up saving you or someone you love's life, or just someone in general that you don't even know. So I do want to preface it by saying that, and without any further ado, I want to get on into the story. So here we go. Okay, so this happened when I was around 6 years old. I was in the first grade, and it was traumatizing, to say the least. So let's go ahead and get on into it. So to start from the beginning, one day, I just like randomly, I woke up, it was a normal day. I was gonna go to school, and I remember most of this very vividly. I know it was a young age. I know I say I'm 6, I was definitely 6, but I remember so much of this extremely vividly. I don't think it will ever leave my memory. So for anybody wondering if this is accurate, it 100% is. So yeah, I woke up one day and I went to my mom and I told her my wrist was hurting, my right wrist. It was just kind of achy. I remember it just feeling kind of not right. It wasn't like a sharp pain, but it was just like a lingering, irritating, enough for me to say something to my mom about it, pain. She said, okay, well, it doesn't look swollen. Maybe you just slept on it funny. Let's go to school. We'll see how it is. So school ended, and my wrist did not get any better. It still hurt. The next day I woke up and it was very swollen, probably like twice the size of what my normal wrist was. Obviously my wrist is bigger now, but it was very swollen and it happened very quickly. So when my mom saw that, she immediately scheduled an appointment and we went to see my pediatrician. And this is where the mistake begins. So, went to see my pediatrician, and they looked at it and had asked my mom like if I had fallen on it, if I'd hit it weird, anything. And she said no, like there was nothing that she did. I wasn't I was an active kid, but I wasn't someone who I've never broken a bone. I've never been like really reckless or like injured myself a lot. So my mom was pretty much, it was easy for her to rule that out, that it was not something that I did to just hurt myself. So she told the doctor all of that, and the doctor said that he thought I just sprained it. They didn't call for an x-ray. They didn't look any further into it. They simply told my mom they think it's sprained. They gave her a splint there at the pediatrician's office. They didn't give me any referrals, and they just sent us on our way in a splint. So my arm was like this, just resting, and they said to just keep it rested. It's probably nothing, and to just not worry about it, and it would probably go away. So my mom took that information, didn't really know what to do with it, and we went home. And later she called her brother, my uncle, who at the time was some type of x-ray technician or something to do with that. I can't remember his exact title. He has lots of different degrees now, but back then he was in the medical field, still is today, but was back then as well. And she called him and just kind of explained what was going on and that she just kind of felt weird about it. She explained what was going on. She explained what it looked like. She explained what the pediatrician said. And my uncle said, I don't think that's right. You probably should just go to the ER. That just does not sound right to me. So at this point, I'm like, you know, I didn't know what was going on exactly, but my mom listened to him. And that evening, I forget the exact time, but it was like later in the evening. Sorry, I keep playing with my hair, by the way. I straightened it for the first time in forever, and it's also super dirty. It's like at least a week's dirtiness. So sorry, I keep fidgeting with it. I'm going to try to stop. But yeah, so we, my uncle told my mom to just take me to the hospital and go to the ER and have them check everything out, get some x-rays, and just get basically some second opinions. So she told my dad, and later that night we went to the ER for what we thought was going to be probably a couple hours visit. They would probably do some x-rays, tell us, you know, more for sure what was going on, and then we'd be sent home like with some medicine or a cast or whatever, and that would be the end of it. But little did we know, I'm like making it kind of a little funny because that's just how I cope with things, because this was honestly like top 3 most traumatizing, like memory burning events in my life. So trying to keep it light, but at the time, and this did happen a long time ago as well. Obviously I'm 24 now. This happened when I was 6. So at the time this was very scary. And especially if you can imagine just being my mom, I'm her oldest, and just nothing like this had ever happened to any of us before. So for her, I'm sure it was terrifying. For me, it was terrifying. For my dad, for everyone. So it was not, and no one knew what was going on. So it was, that just did not help anything, that no one had any clear answer. So we get to the ER. We are there for what felt to me like forever, but eventually we went back and we got a room. This is where the trauma really starts to occur, because me at 6 years old, I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm going to the ER. They're going to poke me and prick me with a bunch of needles, and I'm going to be dealing with a million doctors coming in and out. And I wasn't able to mentally prepare for that. Being 6, I mean, I don't even think my parents knew that all of that was going to happen to even try to talk to me about it. So I just go back there, and all of a sudden I start getting stuck with needles and getting my blood drawn. So all I know is nothing except I am being put in this pain with a bunch of needles poking me, and I'm hooked up to an IV and some other monitors, and there's a million machines around me, and what felt like a million nurses were coming in and out. They were asking me questions. They were asking my mom and dad questions. There was just so much going on. I eventually, and I was sobbing this whole time. I was freaking out, crying, sobbing. I remember at one point they brought in some type of something to run some sort of test that they needed to prick me for and get my blood. And they brought this needle that was called a butterfly needle. It looked like a butterfly, and the needle part was covered up with like a clear tube at the time. And the nurse, because I was just hysterical, the poor nurses, oh my gosh. So the nurse came in to do that, and she was like, Hannah, look, I have this really cool butterfly, and it's going to be really fast, and she's just going to take your blood really fast, and then it's going to be all better. And she pulled the cap off, and I saw the needle, and eventually I just broke down once again immediately. It was just, I knew what it was as soon as I saw that, and that's just an example of how many needles I had seen and been poked with in the last, like, however long it was. Eventually they took me to get an x-ray. So they like wheeled my whole bed to do that. That was not fun for me. That was very scary at the time. Now, obviously I know that those are not painful, but at the time I had no clue what was going on. I thought it was going to be some other type of painful thing that they had to take me out of the room for. I was just freaking out. It was very traumatic, and it didn't make it any better that we had no clue why any of this was happening, what they were testing for, what was going on. We just had no idea. And this whole time my wrist was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It was very swollen, and it hurt a lot. So I remember just being in all this pain, all of these things happening. And then I remember kind of drifting off. We were still in the ER, like little triage room. We had not been admitted or anything yet. And I just remember drifting off and then waking up in the middle of the night, and there was a guy there with his, I forget if it was his daughter or his son, but his young child had gotten like bit by a dog and attacked by a dog. So I remember like waking up in the middle of the night, and my parents were talking to that dad. So like I have a vivid memory of that. And then I remember drifting back off. And the next thing I remember, I was waking up in an actual hospital room. So apparently throughout the night, I guess I had been admitted. My poor parents were up this whole time as well. And I had been brought to a room. I guess I slept through it. And in the morning I woke up and I was in a room. And I remember waking up, and the first thing I heard was my mom was on the phone. She had no clue that I had woken up. My poor mother. She probably feels like this is her fault. But I'd woken up, my mom was on the phone, and she was talking to her sister, who's my aunt, obviously, and was telling her that, they said she's gonna have to have surgery. And that's all I heard. And I woke up out of like a dead sleep and was like, surgery! And I started freaking out. I was crying, screaming, hysterical. Like, it had just been trauma from the time I got to the hospital to falling asleep and waking back up and hearing the word surgery. So that was very scary to hear, especially waking right up out of sleep. And this was all like just from that evening when we were in the ER to the very next morning. So they had scheduled a surgery for that very next day. Still, I had no clue what was going on. All I knew was that my wrist still hurt really bad. It was even bigger, and they were gonna now have to take me away from my mom and dad and operate. And this is a little crazy side note. I just want to throw this in here so I don't forget, but evidently that night when I was in the ER, they literally did something to erase part of my memory, or like cloud and fog up part of my memory. This is a real thing. You can look it up. Whenever I tell people this, they literally think I'm lying. I'm not lying. Okay. So my mom and dad told me that obviously the doctors had to clear this with them. So my mom and dad told me that in the process of getting all those, like when we were still waiting in triage in the ER, when I was getting all those tests done and being poked and taken for x-rays, they had also taken me away from my parents to probe my wrist. My mother said you could hear my screaming down the hallway in the triage room, and they had taken me to a complete like separate back part of the ER to do this. And evidently what it is they take a probe, and they like had cut my wrist and had gone in it and probed around with a little camera to try to see if they could see like infection or whatever it was. And through this, they were able to determine that they needed to operate. And I'll tell you why in a second. But why I say this is because they probed me and did all this, and then they gave me this medicine. I'm not sure of the proper pharmaceutical term, but it's basically amnesia medicine is the way it was described to my mom and dad. They give it to some patients that are going to have like a colonoscopy or things like that, where you need to be lucid enough to function and be able to move parts of your body, but you forget it all later. So they had given me that at 6 years old because the probe thing that they had done was so horrific, they said, and so traumatizing that they did not want me to like remember that. And because I was awake for it and it was very painful, the memory of the pain would be a lot. So they did actually erase part of that. Like, I have no recollection of that happening. I can tell you a million other things that happened in the ER that night and throughout my rest of my hospital stay and my whole childhood. I have a very vivid memory, but that definitely happened. It's like in my medical record, but I do not recall that happening. The probe, the medicine making it go away, being awake for any of that, even being taken out of the room to go do that. The only time I remember leaving the room is when I went to get the x-ray. So that is absolutely insane to me that they did that as well. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what else don't I remember? But I don't know. That's just a really like not sketchy, but like interesting and very weird thing that I don't know. Science is amazing, but it's also crazy and terrifying. But that happened to me because this was such a horrific procedure. Back to the next day at the hospital, I woke up and I heard that I was going to have surgery, and I still didn't know what was going on, but basically, so you don't have to keep wondering, was when they did the probe, they discovered a bunch of infection in my wrist. I was septic. So my body was like filled with infection basically that had started in my wrist, and they needed to operate before it spread and killed me basically. If you know anything about someone who is septic, it is very deadly and very harmful if not taken care of immediately. So that initial pediatrician that I went to that should have ordered the tests and done and looked more into it from the beginning, that thought it was just a sprain, could have ended my life. I know that sounds very dramatic, and I'm so thankful that we did go to the hospital and get second opinions and get help before it was too late. I'm very thankful that my mom thought to call my uncle and thought to double check in all of this, because without that, my infection could have spread and it could have been way too late to fix it or do anything about it. A lot of time with sepsis, you see it in much older people, or people who have had major surgeries, things where infection can enter your body easier and your immune system is much weaker, so it can't fight it off as well. So that's why I say older people, people with major surgeries, things like that. That's at least what the doctors had told me. But obviously anyone can get it. We still to this day have no idea how I got sepsis in my body and how it manifested or anything. We have no determination of the cause. I've had other strange medical things happen to me since that are just weird and unexplainable. So I'm almost like, maybe it's something with my weird immune system or my blood type. I don't really know, but still to this day have no idea why or how that happened. All we knew was that my wrist was septic and it had to be operated on immediately to remove the infection. So after waking up, it wasn't long, and actually some doctors, it was a whole bunch of people, and I was freaking out, like screaming, crying in the room. A whole bunch of people came in, they took my whole bed, they wheeled it to the operating room. I had met my surgeon just a little bit before that. He was fantastic. I do have to say the people at the hospital were all very kind. They were very nice. They were very understanding and very patient. But that doesn't change like the traumatic experience that it was for me. I do feel very bad for the people that had to deal with me, because I know I was not easy to deal with, but it was extremely scary. But I don't want to make it sound like the people that were at the hospital, the nurses, the doctors, the surgeons, everyone were not fantastic, because they were really great. I still remember all of them, some of their names even. I remember a lot of their faces, and they were all fantastic the whole time. They were all very nice, very kind, very patient, did anything for us, explained everything to us. So I did want to say that, but yeah, so I got wheeled to the OR. I remember them putting on a show. It was Mary-Kate and Ashley, one of the old like TV shows that they had. They let me pick what I wanted to watch. They had like different options. And I just remember that I was screaming, freaking out, crying still. And I just remember a mask going on my face and going to sleep and waking up. So it was a very quick thing when they took me, thank God, because I probably would have like somehow figured out how to escape, like Exorcist style. I don't even know. But yeah, so I remember waking up and my whole wrist like was just wrapped and huge, and just like it was just like you couldn't even see my arm. There was just so much bandages and gauze and wires. There was wires everywhere. And I just remember waking up in a different room. I guess it was like a post-op room. I don't know. And then a little while later, I was able to see like my mom and dad and stuff. So that was really good. And I was returned to my regular room, and it was really sweet because when I got there, my uncle, who I talked about previously, had sent me a little like stuffed dog, which I still have today, and some balloons and a little gift. That was super sweet. So he had sent that for me, like a get well soon gift. And I remember going back in the room, and that was in there waiting for me. So that was a really nice memory that I do have about after surgery. So then from there, the battle was not over. Sepsis can be a very serious thing, and even though they get all the infection out, you still have to have a lot of medication for a long time to make sure that it doesn't come back and that the infection clears itself out of your body completely. So basically what happened was I had stayed in the hospital overnight, obviously, had the surgery, was back, and then I stayed for a few more days. I believe it was 3 or 4 days, something like that, while I was initially healing from this surgery, which I still had to do some healing after, but I had to stay in the hospital to get healed from the surgery, and that's so that they could keep checking the incision and all this stuff. And then I also had to, before I left the hospital, if I could speak, sorry, I'm a little hyped up, drinking a Monster. Try not to talk too fast, but I'm also trying to include all the detail and not make this video a million years long. So I'm so sorry, I'm a very fast talker, but I'm trying to give you all the information. So I got done with surgery, and they then told me that I would need what was called a PICC line. I think it's a PIC line, but they called it a PICC line, which was going to be another operation, but I would be awake. So I guess more of like a procedure. I don't know medical terms, but that was horrifying for me because I just got done with this surgery, and now they had to go in. They showed me it was this area on my arm, and what it basically was they had to insert a PICC line, like a tube, a thin clear tube that went from my arm all the way directly to my heart and pumped medication directly into my body. And that way it would help fight the sepsis off. Now, being how I was only 6 years old, and up to this point, I was like shook every 5 seconds with everything that was going on. It seemed like I needed to be poked and prodded with something new every time I opened my eyes or turned my head. So that was horrifying for me. So once again, I began to freak out, and they had prepped me ahead of time. They like gave me this little like lesson on like what was going to happen once we got in there and how it was going to work and how nothing was going to hurt, but I would be awake. And I would be on this table, and they let me pick out another movie. So of course I picked out Mary-Kate and Ashley again. You already know, but it did not make the process any easier for me. I was taken away once again, and I screamed. I remember being on the table and screaming through the entire procedure. I have no clue how long it was, but I remember I was laying flat on the table. My arm that they were inserting the line into was flat. I don't remember feeling anything, any type of pain. I think it was just true fear and terror. It could have been painful. I truly don't remember. I can't imagine that it was. They probably numbed me, but I vividly remember laying there the whole time, just screaming my head off. The nurses saying, "Hannah, it's okay. You're okay. I promise." I'm sure they were so irritated, but you could not tell. At least I couldn't. My little 6-year-old brain couldn't. But yeah, so I was taken to that, and that was eventually done, and I was taken back to my room. And then after that, I actually had both of my arms like fully wrapped. So my right arm and wrist was wrapped, really wrapped a lot around here, but wrapped all the way up from surgery. You gotta remember, I was just little tiny. My arm was a lot smaller. And then my PICC line arm was completely wrapped as well. We got a lot of training and classes on how to do the PICC line because, like I said, it was a pump for medicine. So they give you a pump and like doses of the medication and all these different things that you need, and you eventually administer it at home. So our hospital stay, like I said, was, I believe, 3 to 4 days. It may have been a week. I can't really remember. And this was all during the school year as well. So I was missing a lot of school and doing a lot of like schoolwork from home once I went back home. But yeah, we were in the hospital for 3 or 4 days. Like I said, it may have been a week. And during that time, I was healing. They were showing us how to do the PICC line. They were administering it for us there and having my parents practice on how to do it. It was not an easy experience at all. Not to the fault of the nurses or doctors, just the whole situation in general was terrifying. And then after we had stayed there for all of that time and I had healed and they had seen the progress, it was finally time for me to go home. But the fight was still not over, of course. Like I said, this was a very like major thing, so we still had a lot to do from that point. Like I said, we were discharged from the hospital with a order, basically, like a thing for a home nurse, basically. She didn't stay there the whole time. I forget her name, but I can see her face in my head. Like, she was phenomenal. She would come to check on me, check my wrist, check my incision, check my infection. She would check my PICC line. She would help with the medication, but my parents also had training to do that. And the nurse would be there to check in, make sure that it wasn't spreading, getting any worse, picking up on any signs that someone who's not trained to look for those things would not pick up on. So I had this nurse that was with me a lot, but she was fantastic. I ended up missing about like a month or a month and a half of school. I was doing schoolwork from home. Like I said, I had to learn how to write with my left hand because the PICC line was up here, but I could still function my wrist and my hand and all of that kind of stuff as the gauze was able to be moved up later on. But my right wrist was still, like, my whole arm was just out of commission. I couldn't write with it. I couldn't get it wet. I couldn't do anything for over a month. And I couldn't go to school during that time, nothing. My scar at first was like huge. You can see it now. It's very small. It's only this big. I put a lot of vitamin E on it, not gonna lie. But looks incredibly different than when it was first done. But yeah, so my nurse was there. She was actually there on my birthday as well. All this was going on during my birthday, and she gave me the cutest gift. It was like this little journal and like fun pens and just all different kinds of stuff that she got me for my birthday, which she did not have to do. I thought that was super sweet that just my home nurse did that for me. But yeah, I had to stay at home like that because of the incision and making sure that that didn't get any worse. And then also the PICC line, because the medicine was so strict and so regular. I could not attend school. I couldn't risk getting that pulled out because it was just an exposed tube that had wrap over it. So I couldn't risk being at school, having it hit, getting it pulled out, having anything happen to me at all was a huge no-no. So I missed, like I said, a month to a month and a half of the first grade, but I still did my work from home. So I did pass and moved on to the next grade. And yeah, so then eventually my medicine was working. I healed. My PICC line was actually able to be removed, which was crazy because they just do it. Like my nurse, literally the last time she had to see me, she came over, it was to remove my PICC line, and all she did, I can like feel the sensation. Oh, it like makes me cringe, but it was just there, and she just like pulled it out, like was just pulling it like this until it all came out, and I could feel it. Oh, I could feel it once it got to my arm. I could feel it. It felt like a spaghetti noodle inside my arm was being pulled, and then it just popped out. It was crazy. I just did not even know stuff like that could even happen. Even if somebody showed me that nowadays, I'd be like, I don't even know if that's how they do it anymore nowadays. But that was insane. When she did that, I was like, and then my little 6-year-old brain, I was like, I could have done that the whole time. This thing is so annoying because I couldn't get my arms in the tub. Like I couldn't do anything. So that was really annoying, but it was crazy when she pulled it out and we said our goodbyes and I was finally better. I still had to have my wrist wrapped, but it was like healed for the most part. And it wasn't like a nurse had to keep checking on it. And eventually I healed and I was better and my scar went away. Like I said, I did have to go to routine x-rays for the next several years. It started off like monthly, then it would be like bi-monthly, then every 6 months. And then throughout the I think it was over the course of 7 to 10 years or something like that. And I had to go just to make sure that the infection didn't come back, that a new infection didn't form, that the thing healed, of course, just to make sure there was nothing else going on inside my body. I had to get blood work done, all kinds of stuff for years and years and years and years after. It was a very serious thing. So, and then eventually they deemed me okay to not have to do that kind of stuff anymore. And I was eventually better, but it was one of the top 3 craziest experiences of my life, and especially of my childhood. I still to this day truly, this sounds ridiculous, but truly fear needles, IVs, shots, going to the doctor at all, going to the hospital. It truly sends me into a panic. People ask me all the time, how did you ever have a child if you're so petrified of that stuff? And my answer is like, I don't really know. Somehow I just did it. It was pure and sheer terror every time I went to the doctor. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's just like how I feel like it was burned into my brain, and my brain can't like think a different way now. It just goes into defense mode whenever I even like smell a hospital or like am near one, especially if I have to get a shot or blood drawn or anything. If you know anything about being pregnant, you know you have to do that a lot. So I just kind of pushed through it. My baby was more important, still is obviously, but that's how I got through that. That is my story of how I was septic at 6 years old in the first grade. Truly very traumatizing, one of the scariest experiences of my life still to this day. I don't wish it upon anyone, but I want to say all this because if you ever feel like there's something going on with your child and your doctors are not listening to you, make them listen, or keep going to doctors until you find someone who does, because moms and parents and people know their kids better than these doctors do. And if you think something is wrong and you truly believe that, fight for it, because if somebody didn't fight for me, I might not be here today. And I am so grateful that there were people who could and did fight for me. It obviously was not a great experience and it was very traumatizing. I've said that a million times, but obviously it was worth it compared to the alternative, which could have very easily been death. And I know that sounds extreme and dramatic, but it's the truth. And that's why I say your gut, go with your gut. Your gut is usually right, especially if you think something's wrong, and especially if you think something's wrong with your child. I'm not saying just don't trust doctors and don't believe what they say. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying second opinions are not a bad thing. And sometimes people can be wrong. People are people. And sometimes people can be wrong, and sometimes people just honestly don't care. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this story time. Sorry it was a little chaotic and crazy and that I talk fast and I'm awkward on camera. But I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you like this style video, if you want to see more videos like it. I have tons of stories about my life that I could tell. A lot of crazy things have happened to me. But I do appreciate you very much for watching. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to view this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that it can help someone. Or if someone has gone through the same thing as me, let me know. I've never met anyone in my life that has gone through even something remotely like this, especially at such a young age. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching. As always, if you have any suggestions for future videos, please let me know in the comments, and I will try my best to make it happen. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.